The quality of life of the citizens of Pascagoula revolves so much around the waterfront and beach and doing water things. But a big part of it is the folks who are interested in getting out and exercising and enjoying the fresh air and the smell of the salt water when we're down here. My wife and I ride bicycles every morning down here for about a 45 to 60-minute route. And it's just a terrific place to be, and it allows you to get back to nature but still be close to home.
A very common thing was we all obtain very valuable information and education and training, to where if whoever goes through this program, whether they want to continue down the path of the career that they chose or the program they chose, whether it's cosmetology or esthetician, they're going to be able to take these very valuable life skills and apply them to any career and any job.
So this here gave me an opportunity to be able to jump into a career and a life that I really wanted. It provided everything that I wanted in life. I should have been doing it. I feel like I should have been doing it years ago. They very hands-on, practice every day, however many times a day you want to. Everybody taking turns, so it's very helpful.
We receive baby oysters set on blank shell, and our job as gardeners is to give them all the TLC that we can to try to help ensure their survival. And so the guys behind me, they're currently gardening, and what they do is they're looking at each shell for the baby spat, the baby oysters. They're measuring the growth of the spat. They're also checking for survival. They're removing predators. We also have to make sure that we keep the shells as clean as possible in their natural environment. But when it comes to gardening, it's primarily keeping them clean, keeping them free of predators, and keeping a track of their growth record over time. So the oysters that they're gardening right now will ultimately be collected at the end of our school year and be put on an undisclosed reef by DMR. And at that point in time, they're used for restoration. And so the goal is that these oysters, we're going to raise them to a subadult stage. DMR is going to go put them on an undisclosed reef, and they're ready to make babies. They're ready to spawn. It's restoration, it's water quality, it's habitat and ecology for other animals in the ecosystem that this oyster gardening program and oysters naturally growing in the wild play. And it's such a critical part to the culture of South Mississippi and communicating that to everybody. And people in our community, they'll follow us on our social media and stuff just to know what's going on with the oysters. How are they doing this year? How many are you growing this year? And so it reaches outside of just us.
Well, I got into oyster gardening when I learned about it from some friends, and it was just really appealing to me that I could volunteer to do something to give back to the community and to the environment and grow some oysters for restoration to go back out on to new reefs in the sound. You know, oysters are always helping to improve water quality because naturally they're filtering gallons and gallons every day. So the oysters also help all kinds of other animals that rely on them or take shelter in the reefs. So you know, adding restoration oysters back out in the sound and helping to eventually grow the fishery is to me just a really positive thing. Love to help spread the good news about what the program's all about, and you know, the network of volunteer gardeners that do it for fun because they love to do it and grow restoration oysters for returning to the sound. You know, it's a good sized network, and between Mississippi and Alabama, and I think there's a lot of room to grow.
From a day-to-day perspective, the work involves determining where do we want to explore, where do we want to survey and look for the apple snail infestations, and then once we find those, we are destroying the egg masses by scrubbing them off the substrata that they've been laid on. It could be a grass, a marsh grass, a tree, a piling, and so the egg masses are bright pink, thank goodness, and so we can we've got our eyes trained to see them in the marsh and in the bayous, and so we either scrub them off or otherwise knock them into the water, and once they're under the water surface, they're no longer viable. The invasive apple snail impacts the other native snails in the area by consuming the vegetation and the food sources that they would normally be using. The thing about the apple snail, as is with other invasive species, is they don't belong here, so they don't have many natural predators, and for whatever reason in our environment they proliferate and eat very aggressively. So they can destroy marsh grasses, and also in an agricultural setting they can have a deleterious effect on rice fields, crawfish farming, as they're experiencing in Louisiana right now.
One of our main focuses is not just monitoring but also stewardship of the birds. So you can see here an example of one of our ropes and signs that are protecting the least terns. Mississippi has one of the most dense concentrations of least terns nesting anywhere in the Gulf. They do very well on these man-made beaches, at least when things go right. But certainly they are vulnerable to disturbance, to incidental trampling, because they lay eggs right in the sand. They're very camouflaged. So a big part of our program, of our restoration work, is to protect the terns during the summer months when they are here.
For this particular project, the funds will be used to install and monitor 4 litter getters, is what you can see behind me, which are in-stream floating litter collection devices, and they do a really good job at trapping floating litter as it comes down during heavy rain events or when the tides are going in and out. It just helps keep that in one spot, and then it gets cleaned out a couple times a month to make sure that litter's not having an impact downstream. Yeah, so litter is a huge impact on water quality. I mean, from the unsightly category, there's been a lot of research that's gone out that shows one of the top reasons why people don't visit areas is if it's trashy or full of litter. In addition to that, there's a whole lot of ecological issues that come along with litter. Particularly like as it breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces, like microplastics and things like that, then it gets kind of integrated within the food web. Any type of projects that are going in the ground, they can help, restore habitats and the functions that they've had historically is always a good thing. So in addition to the actual restoration work, the attention that the Gulf and Mississippi in particular has gotten for a lot of these projects has really been beneficial.
I am with Climb CDC as a crew member. I lead a crew of 5 men here in Turkey Creek. We focus on invasive removal. We introduce native species back. We spot, spray herbicide to ensure that the native species we want to be here and that we want to grow survive, and that the ones we don't die. When I started the project 9 months ago, most of the properties were heavily overgrown with not only invasives but also native species that were unhealthy or scraggly, struggling to fight off the invasives. And so after removing the invasives and spent 3 months during the winter planting 16,900 native trees and watching them grow and helping nurture them, the properties have become excellent, beautiful in every way.